Good morning, everybody. It's so good to see you. Glad you're here with us this morning. This has been Pastor Appreciation Month, and I want to thank you all for the many cards and gifts that we received, the many ways you've shown us your appreciation. And I just want to say thank you to you. We've enjoyed it. And, who doesn't enjoy being told they're loved? And I want to tell you that you are loved. We appreciate you very, very much. This is the 7th Sunday in our series, Choosing to Be Happy. Today's teaching is Pursue Peace. And we're working from Matthew 5:9. But first, did you hear about the auto mechanic who was addicted to brake fluid? He said, "Oh, it's no big deal. I can stop anytime." See, he was addicted to brake fluid and stop. Okay, let's read our passage for today. Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." Now, I don't think this is going to take a lot of digging. I don't think we need to go back to the original languages for this or even delve into first century Mediterranean culture. We're just going to take a chainsaw and cut this right down the middle. How's that for peaceful imagery? Going to cut this into two parts. To start with, we'll examine the first half. Blessed are the peacemakers. And then we'll move on to the second part, for they will be called children of God. Sometimes we have to really dig to draw out the meaning that's there, but I just don't think this is one of those times. Blessed are the peacemakers. When I read that, I can't help but be reminded of Paul's words to the Christians in Rome, when he said, "If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone." Part of that 12th chapter of Romans has Paul talking to the church, to Christians, about how to get along with each other. And then part of the chapter, including these verses, talks about how to get along with people who are not part of the church, how to get along with their unchristian neighbors and unbelieving friends and relatives. And it's good advice. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. But sometimes that sounds to me very passive. It's not. The next few verses that we're actually not going to read today shows that Paul is being anything but passive. He is actively and intentionally pursuing peace. He's not saying, "Don't rock the boat." Sometimes that's the idea I get when I read, as much as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. It's like, don't make waves. And there are some situations in life where we are wronged by others that the path of least resistance would not be to keep the peace. It would be to strike back. So even though Paul writes, if it's possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone, he's not saying don't rock the boat, don't make waves, because there's nothing weak, there's nothing passive about being a peacemaker. Notice what Jesus said. Blessed are the peacekeepers. Didn't say that, did he? At first glance, that sounds sort of like what Paul is saying. As much as you can, just keep the peace. And is it important to keep the peace? Sure it is. It's honorable work. A peacekeeper tries to keep things right, on the right track when peace is threatened. But a peacemaker steps in and works to bring peace where there is conflict, where there's a lack of peace. And there is an Old Testament parallel to Jesus' words here. In Psalm 34:14, we read, "Look for peace and work for it." There's nothing passive about that. Actively get involved. Try to find peace. And if you can't find it, work to make it happen. I like that. Look for peace. Believe that peace is a possibility. Don't give into the fatalism of believing that violence is inevitable. Give peace the benefit of the doubt. You see, the antithesis of working for peace is hiding behind our right to not get involved. Thinking if we just leave well enough alone, pretty soon the storm will pass us by and everything will be all right. During World War II, there was an anti-Nazi theologian who lived in Germany. He was also a Protestant pastor, Martin Niemöller. And he wrote about the consequences of not actively pursuing peace. You've probably heard this before, but he wrote, in Germany they came first for the communists. And I didn't speak up because I wasn't a communist. And then they came for the trade unionists, and I didn't speak up because I was not a trade unionist. And then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak up because I wasn't a Jew. And then they came for me. And by the time they came for me, there was no one left to speak up. In the story of the Good Samaritan, I'm sure the priest and the Levite who passed by the wounded man without stopping to help probably comforted them with the thoughts, well, it's none of my business. This doesn't concern me. I'm sure someone else will come along and help them. And then the Samaritan happened along. He probably had better things to do. He probably had misgivings, worries. But he thought to himself, what if that was me laying there? And he took a risk. He was not content to be a peacekeeper. He was determined to be a peacemaker and make a difference where he could. I think that horse is kind of dead, so I'm going to quit beating it. But the second part of the Beatitude, it says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. What does that mean? It sounds holy, like there should be organ music and the fluttering of angels' wings. And that's probably just because we make it too difficult. They will be called children of God. I'll never forget many years ago when our entire family was traveling by airplane. And when we got to our destination, we were getting off, waiting in line, and the way you thread your way and move on past the pilot and the head flight attendant to exit the plane. And as we were walking up the aisle, that flight attendant looked at Will, and then looked at Ben, and then looked at me, and said, "Wow, I can sure tell you guys are traveling together. A couple sons and their father, right?" Well, how did they know that? How did she know that? Had she looked at our travel documents? Had she gone and gotten the manifest from the airplane to see who the passengers were? No, it was the resemblance. We looked enough alike that she could tell we belonged together. And this beautiful biblical language, they will be called children of God. It just means when you work for peace, you resemble your Father. You look like Him. And another way we could put that is when we are peacemakers, people recognize us as carrying on the family business. Look at that peacemaker. She must be a daughter of God the Father. Or he must be one of God's children. Every week I've listed 4 attributes to show what the beatitude we are studying looks like. What it looks like lived out in the lives of Christ followers. I'm not going to do that this week. This is so simple, I don't want to complicate it. We can learn everything we need to know just by looking at this word. The root word is peace. In the Garden of Eden, in the fall that we read about in the first few chapters of Genesis, when humanity turned its back on God and said, "No thanks, I'll go my own way. I'll please myself. I'll do what I want." There were consequences for our sinful behaviors. And those consequences came in the form of broken relationships. And those broken relationships can be fit into 3 categories. First, a broken relationship with God. And if you read that story, you'll note where it says how they hid from God. Because that relationship was broken, they were ashamed and they didn't want to deal with God right at that moment. And then there were broken relationships with other people. It tells us that there was friction in the relationship between Adam and Eve, and by the very next generation, murder had entered into God's good creation. And then the third broken relationship was a broken relationship with nature itself, with creation. When God said it's only going to be by the sweat of your brow that you eke out a living from this planet. Those broken relationships breed conflict. But Christ came to reconcile us with the Father. That in turn puts us on the road to healing in our relationships with other people. And once our relationship with the Father is restored and relationships with other people begin to be restored, we can even find healing in our relationship to our planet, with nature itself. So those broken relationships are a broken relationship with God, a broken relationship with people, and a broken relationship with creation. But God came to heal that. And you can read about that in 2 Corinthians 5. The key, though, I think, to understanding this concept is the second half of this word, peacemaker. In other words, we're not talking about someone who stands around idly or wringing their hands just wishing there could be peace. But a peacemaker gets right in the thick of things and works for peace in the midst of conflict. It's active. It's not passive. We are tasked with making a difference in our world, actively advocating for restored relationships, being ambassadors of reconciliation, and engaging conflicts to introduce peace. Finally, if we are peacemakers, people will look at us and recognize that we are children of God. And I think that's one of the coolest things about this verse. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Let me read to you my paraphrase of this beatitude. I'm not saying it's better, it's just my paraphrase, just another way of looking at it. It says, how happy are those who don't content themselves with being spectators at a fight, but who step in and initiate reconciliation, who take a volatile situation and guide it to resolution, and who rather than say there is no hope, bring the encouraging word, give peace a chance. For people like that resemble their heavenly Father, and others notice. I want to say just one more thing about this. It's easy to think in this whole subject of pursuing peace, well, who are we? What can we do to pursue peace? The problems of the world are so big, and we're so small. And again, I'm reminded of the Good Samaritan. When no one else wanted to get involved, he got down on the wounded man's level and determined to do whatever he could. Determined to do whatever he could to make things better. He said, I don't know you, but I'm your friend. He didn't end a war or free a nation. He just helped one wounded brother. The lesson there for us is this. Don't let what you can't do keep you from doing what you can. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Let's pray.